What's going on, everybody? Hope you are having a wonderful week so far. Yeah, it's been crazy recently. I've been writing a lot of music and doing a lot of podcasts. So first of all, I want to say thank you to everybody that's been listening and keep on downloading these episodes. It's amazing. If this is the first time you are listening to this podcast, please go hit subscribe and go listen to all the episodes back. There's a bunch. I believe this is the 118th, so you've got a bit of time to go and listen to. Now moving on, it is podcast time, and this week I have the one and only Sohmi come on and have a conversation. Came across Sohmi. Well, she actually corrected me in the podcast of when we first met, but she really came on my radar during the pandemic, and one of her first records, I was like, wow, this is different, but also really, really well done. And it just felt very authentic to her. So I kind of briefly kept in touch with her over the pandemic, and we've bumped into each other and been on the same lineups or been on the same festivals, and kind of seen her over the last couple of years or last 18 months really grow as an artist. So I really wanted to get her on, and I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting to have a conversation like we just had. It was a beautiful conversation. So I'm going to stop rambling on and let you guys hear it. So without further ado, Sohmi, what's cooking?
Hey, good morning.
Morning, it's evening now. It's nighttime for me.
Night? Wait, are you in Detroit?
No, I'm in England, 6 p.m.
Oh, wow. So do you split your time evenly between the two places?
Not evenly. Just depends kind of where I'm at in the world. So I'm just turning my speakers off. I remember I just asked you to turn everything off, and I didn't turn everything off myself. Yeah, it just depends where I'm touring, really. At the moment, I'm doing like 1 week in America, 1 week in Europe touring. So it's like, seems pointless me going to America and then going to Detroit and then Detroit back to Europe and then back to England. So it's like I do England, America tour, America, England, and then England, Europe.
Oh my gosh. So, you lost me at like the second England, but
it's good fun though, right? How it's like, we're lucky what we do. So lucky.
So lucky.
When did it all start for you? Because when did we first meet? I'm trying to think back.
So we first met, I don't know if it was like we met, but I opened for you and Option 4 at Sound Nightclub.
Yeah. Did we meet that night though?
Like in passing.
Yeah.
You know, I think maybe Mark made sure that we at least said hello during before the changeover. But that was May of 2019.
And then did I see you at Brooklyn Mirage?
That sounds, which show?
I can't remember, but it was that year.
Oh no, I had not been. Oh, so I went to I had not yet been to the Brooklyn Mirage in 2019. Like in November of that year, I went to Avant Gardner, the inside hall, I should say. And I went for like a drum code party for fun. But that was, I had not yet experienced the outside like Mirage part.
The Mirage is the best. Have you been this year?
It is the best. Yeah, I just played, I don't know how many weeks ago it was now, but maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago with Rufus Du Sol.
Sick. Oh, Brennan played then as well. Option 4 played that night as well, didn't he?
Did he?
No. He did
following weekend.
He did Duke Dumont. Yeah.
Yes.
How was the Rufus Du Sol? Because I was in New York at the same time. I played a show.
Yeah. Did you have a show?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it was epic, and it was fun because it was like right after, I guess, they had renovated the space. And so it looked a bit different than the last time I had been there. Like they got rid of the big pillars that used to block everyone's view. Yeah. And they like expanded the screen, behind the stage. And it's now this like crazy wraparound, I don't even know, amazing thing.
I wonder how many people get epilepsy just because of that.
I think if you're like way up front and they get the visuals going, the chances are high.
Yeah, it's amazing what they've done with that venue. It's like I haven't been this year to the Mirage part, and I don't think I will. I don't think I'm playing there all summer. But it's crazy what they've done considering over the years. What's it like to play there?
Yeah. So I've played there maybe 3 or 4 times now to different like sizes of audience, you know, and at different times too. Like I've played there in the daytime, you know, like I've opened up a party from like literally just the staff, you know, like doors, and there being nobody there, and it's like 100 million degrees outside to you know, getting to play support before someone like Boris Brecha or Rufus. And so like, you know, very different kinds of shows, different like sizes of audience, like I said. And it's just so, no matter what, like it's just such a grandiose space. Like it's an incredible experience. I will say though, that the way that it's designed and built, like, it's sort of an optical illusion from where you're standing on stage. Like you don't realize how big it is on stage. I know, right? It's weird. Yeah. Right? Like the depth perception is completely off. So like it seems like you're playing to a very short room. And then it's only until you see videos that, you know, people have took from like the upstairs looking down, and you're like, oh my God, is it that deep? Like, and it's probably for the best that you can't really perceive that, or else I'd probably be like freaking out.
I think it's because you're like lower down. So the crowd is actually quite close to you, and you're also like pretty low in considering a normal. Like if you were playing a festival, you'd be much higher. Yeah. For some reason, so I guess so everyone can see you, but like it's not necessarily about that. Where there, you're lower down, so you only see like half the crowd.
I know what you mean. Like the stage isn't so elevated to where you can see like the perspective. So. Yeah, it's like flat, kind of. And so you just can't tell like how deep this thing goes.
Maybe that's just because I'm short as fuck and I just can't see.
I'm short too. So, you know, like I need to get them to give me a box like to stand on. It's like 50-50 whether or not I'm going to need the box like before I play a set.
Yeah, I have it on my rider. I have it on my tech rider. Yeah, the decks have to be at a certain height. And
I should do that from now on, so that it's not like a scramble.
You should.
Like before,
it's still a scramble because they never check it.
Right.
But it's then also to say, guys, we've asked for this, like, please.
Right.
It's I played a show in Houston this weekend, and like it was one of these like movable, like it was like a normal movable like festival table. It wasn't a festival though. It was just in like a pool party, and it was so high, and it was like blazing sun, and you know when like the sun's hitting the decks and you can't even see the screen, and you're like,
oh, that's the worst.
I was like, guys, and then they brought this like plank of wood out, and I was like, I'm sorry, but I'm not like, I don't want to break my ankle. So eventually they like pulled the table down because the table had like hoists on it. And I was like, why didn't you just do that first of all? Like, would have been easier.
Seriously. Maybe they didn't realize.
Short man problems, hey? It's funny when I've played a few sets with MK, and he's obviously like fucking huge. And we've done sets where I've been on a stand and he's not, and he's still taller than me, and I'm like, how is this possible? This is just like the genes my parents gave me just destroyed me.
It's okay that like, you know what, that like your energy and your personality and your talent and all the other good stuff just more than compensates for it. Absolutely. Like, I don't even, you know what I mean?
I like being short.
You know, I do too.
Yeah, I think there's pros and cons, I guess. But I think there's more pros than cons, if I'm honest.
Yeah, like we can fly under the radar,
exactly.
You know?
You can walk in you can walk in a club and not be seen, which is great.
Exactly. I mean, the hair kind of makes it a bit hard. This long, especially when it's colorful, it's like a bit obvious. But, you know, if I were to tie it up, we can fly under the radar.
My beard is a bit of a giveaway.
Yes, a giveaway as well.
I remember when was this? 2018. I think it's 2018 Dirty Bird Camp Out. It was the like the first year at the new place where they're at, I think. And maybe it was 2018, I think. And it was so dusty and it got really cold at night. And I put like a mask over my face, like a bandana over my face, and I put glasses on, like fake, like clear glasses. And nobody knew who I was. It was fucking hilarious. So I went up, I was talking to Justin Martin, and he like literally didn't know who I was. He was like,
even with the beard?
No, because I had a mask over I had a bandana that covered
it was covering the
So like, it was literally like, all people could see was like my eyes. It was fucking hilarious. But it's mad how people recognize people, right? I feel like everyone's got something.
That's so true. I guess just the eyes are not necessarily enough.
I don't have like dark or blue piercing eyes where like people would recognize you from, right?
Right.
So how did things start with you because you've been on my radar for a while, but it seems like in the last 18 months, things have really like popped off for you.
That sounds like an accurate kind of observation, which is cool that you've been able to kind of glean that somehow. Well, I guess, I mean, I can, start from the beginning.
Yeah, please do. I think people were really interested in it because I think there's so many people trying to work out how this whole industry works. And I think especially for a female, it's like really interesting how your career has kind of like evolved over the years. Especially, I think, obviously you're going to go into it, but I think I started hearing more and more about you during COVID. And I'm just kind of interested in what that happened. But let's go back right to the beginning on how it kind of all started.
Yeah. So I'll start with like moving to LA because that's so critical to like all of this. So I was living on the East Coast from about like 2009 until the very end of 2015.
Where were you living?
Christmas. I was living in New Jersey, actually. I know, it's super exciting. I was living kind of like right across the bridge from New York City, and I would commute, and I was working in tech at the time, but I would commute by taking this like ferry across the river, and then I had to take like a bus and then the subway just to get to my office every day. It was wild.
What tech? What type of tech were you in?
I was in, at the time I was working for like an email marketing company. I'm sure, somebody listening to this podcast has used their services before, but it's called Constant Contact. It's a pretty big email marketing company, kind of like a MailChimp before MailChimp came along. And so I was a product manager there, and I relocated to LA early 2018 to kind of try my hand at working on the West Coast. I heard good things about tech kind of bubbling and blowing up on the West Coast. Besides, I mean, obviously not San Francisco, like it's always been a hub, but like I had heard that in LA things were kind of, starting to pick up, and kind of wanted a change of pace, change of scene. I wanted warmer weather. I was getting like bronchitis every year. I'm serious. Like I was like, okay, one of these years it's just going to turn into pneumonia. And like, I would develop this terrible cough for 4 months every winter without fail.
Do you smoke?
On the East Coast? No, I just like I think it's genetic. Like my mom and my brother both very easily catch colds, and once they start coughing, it's like that's it. It's going to go on for 4 months.
Game over.
And I was like, game over. And I was like, this is not the vibe at all anymore. And so I was like, if I moved to a warmer like city, would that change things? And it did. I was like, well, there we go. That's the correlation. Cold weather is not for me. And so I moved out to LA for new adventures and a new job. I got a new job at a startup on Abbot Kinney, which is a fun area in Venice. And I was just like ready to live this life here.
Yeah.
And then I made a bunch of new friends here, and all of them were super into raving. And all of them were very much into electronic, like underground dance music. And they kind of just like pulled me into their group and into their world and into their weekend activities, which consisted pretty much solely of like going out to like raving and going to festivals and stuff like that. And I had never done any of that stuff ever, which is crazy. Like I didn't know really what underground house or techno music was until 2016.
That's crazy.
And I just
that's really crazy. That's like 6 years ago.
Yeah, like 6 years ago.
Yeah, wow,
I listened to this music for
Have
the
you
first
got a dog
time.
in the background?
I do. Can you hear him?
Yeah, he's like smashing something up.
Oh, I'm so sorry. He's just throwing a tantrum in his bed. Like
It's just eating something.
Sorry about that.
It's all good.
Sorry about that.
If it was a human, I'd tell him to shut up. But if it's a dog, we'll allow it. It's all good.
I'm so sorry.
It's like, it doesn't matter.
I have like noise cancellation on my ear.
Oh, so you can't hear it.
I couldn't hear it. Sorry. So anyway, to kind of fast forward, like I fell just deeply and madly in love with the scene and the music. And, all of 2016, I was like trying to assimilate into this new job, but kind of struggling at work because I'd be tired every day from like having gone out the night before. And I was like literally partying and going to whether it was the warehouse or, like Exchange or Sound or wherever, I was just like out 7 nights a week.
Which is funny because I always look at New York as that type of city, but I don't look at LA as that type of city. I look at LA as like a city where people don't work, and no disrespect to people in LA.
so true.
But it's true. Like, I look at New York as like the city that people hustle really hard, work really hard, but they also party just as hard. So the fact that you kind of like took that New York energy to LA is amazing.
Yeah, I think because I was like commuting into New Jersey and like the ferry cut off at like midnight and it just was like for me logistically harder to party like that. I actually didn't all that much from like 24 to 28. I was just grinding and on my grinding in tech. So I think I had a lot of pent up energy and I brought all of that with me to LA. And like you said, I brought that New York, hard partying energy with me to LA. And I was a mad woman. I was out of my mind. It was like pretty much unsustainable. And that's the conclusion I arrived at the following year in 2017, when I was like, I'm going to die if I try to keep this double life up of like the tech product manager and this like, it was just going out all the time, listening to house and techno. So I was like, you know what? I've been grinding for like 10 years straight, straight from college. Also, if he's like really driving you crazy, I'll kick him out.
It's all good. Like, I'll let you know if it's too loud. It's fine.
Okay. And I decided to quit my job. I was like, that's it. I'm just going to.
When you quit your job, sorry to butt in, but were you like, I want to be in music, or were you like, I'm just going to quit my job and work it out?
It was a bit more of the latter. I think subconsciously I had these like, I want to call them maybe fantasies about getting into music, but like, I don't think I was like able to admit that to myself. I don't know. I was like, no, I don't know how to do this. I've never touched a pair of decks before. Like, this is crazy, but all I knew was that I was not happy going into work every day anymore and doing what I was doing. And I just wanted to be around the scene all the time. I didn't know in what capacity. I just was like, I need to be around this like all the time. This is the only thing that makes me happy. Also,
I might have to get you to kick the dog out.
Yes. He's got to go.
He's going for it. Oh dear.
You have lost your privileges. Look at him. He's in this bed.
What dog is it?
Bye. He's a little bitty pincher.
Oh, right.
You're gonna say hello to Will.
What's up, dude? Shut up.
You're out.
Get
You're
out.
out. You're out. You're out.
Gotta love it on podcast. I think this is like the third one that's been interrupted by a dog.
Okay. I'm so sorry. Normally he's so well behaved and quiet, but like
Everyone says that about their dog. I don't believe it. Never believe it. Everyone's so like that about their child as well. It's like, oh, my child's so advanced. They're so good. They sleep well at night, and then like until you really get to know the child, and it's a little fucking dickhead.
Oh, you got me.
Yeah.
I won't say he's advanced. I love him. He's just not advanced, but that's okay.
He's great at the alphabet already. But yeah. So you just quit your job. Like,
yes.
How does that feel? Like I've had jobs outside of the music industry, but they were never like careers. Like for me, I always knew that I wanted to have a music career. So so every job that I was in, I knew that there was going to be an end to it.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So how was it?
Got chills.
How was it for you? Like
I got chills.
how was it for you going from like not living in New York, doing your thing? Like I can't put words into your mouth, but I can imagine that you're like, tech is my life now. Like corporate life is my life. You come to LA, you keep the bronchitis in New York, and then you're like, I need to quit my job, but I don't have any other plan. Like what does that feel that first day when you don't go into your work?
Just so many emotions, like I was 30,
Wow.
to date myself,
Yeah.
but I was 30 when I made that decision. Like for my 30th birthday, I got nice and proper drunk,
Yeah.
and that's the last time I've been that drunk, But no, I think I blacked out half the night, and that's the last time I've done that. So yay!
Solid
But
night.
I remember crying actually to Mark, who's now my manager, but at the time he was just like a really close friend of mine, and I was like, I'm not happy with my life. I just turned 30. What do I do? And he sort of guided me through that and was like, listen, if you're not happy, like you got to figure out what makes you happy. And I was like, going to sound makes me happy. Being around you guys and this music and this scene makes me happy. And he's like, well, like, do you want to do this? He's like, is that what's inside of you? Is that really what maybe? And I was like, maybe, I think so, but I can't, I'm 30, like this, it's insane. It's impossible. I can't, I know there's no way my life's over. So ridiculous. And,
but I want to butt in because it's society tells you that. And it's so true. It's so true that like, I even can have it in my head as well. And I've got friends, like I was literally right before this conversation, I was talking to one of my friends. She works like in a tiny little city in America and like wants to leave and wants to go to like a bigger city and go do bigger things in her career. But like society, she's like, I'm too old. And she's like 25. And I'm like,
oh my God.
But like,
what?
I know, but I'm like, society tells you these things that you have to do one thing and you have to, and you can't change your life. Like you can start a new career at 60 and be the most successful person in the world. But also,
that's so true.
What is it about being successful or is it about being happy? Like, let's talk real. Like when you quit your job and you were like, okay, I'm not doing anything now, but I've got something that I want to work out on how to make my life happier. Like, you weren't chasing money.
No, I ran away from all the money I was making.
Exactly.
Like, you know what I mean? I went the opposite direction of money.
But I guess also the question is, how long did it take you to do that? How many years of your life did it take you to realize that making money doing something you don't love is not worth making the money?
Yeah, gosh. Well, okay. So to kind of answer that, I did want to quickly just circle back to the thing that you had said earlier that I was like, oh my God, you gave me chills because the way you said it, that just like resonated so hard with me, because that's how I felt my whole life. And you had said that you always knew, no matter what other jobs you're in, that like there was an expiration date for each of those things. Like you were never like in those other things, because like your real career to you was your music career. Yeah. And I always felt that way, except I hadn't had like, I guess, the balls to admit that the other thing that I wanted was the music career. Yeah. So like I had been 1 foot in, 1 foot out of every job I'd ever had. And in the back of my mind, it was always like this fantasy of like, oh, if I didn't have to do this, I'd be doing music. Except like I had never really taken the steps to be doing the music. I just didn't want to ever really be committed to those other jobs because I never wanted to like maybe like let go of that fantasy. I don't know how to explain it.
So
but like,
so what was keeping you there? What was keeping you? I'm trying to dig a little deeper for other people that are in that situation right now.
Yeah,
it's like Is it a family thing? Is it yeah?
I mean, that was a huge part of it. It was like I didn't want to disappoint my parents. You know, and I'm South Korean. Yeah, I come from pretty traditional parents. And yeah, like I just didn't want to disappoint them. Like I had been a straight A student my whole life. They had high hopes for me to, I went to a good college. They had high hopes for me to become like a lawyer, maybe get into finance, like in my father's footsteps, that just anything besides
music.
Literally, they were like, just please anything but music. And I always found that also so kind of like confusing and unfair in a way, because my whole life, they had also encouraged me to do music. Like my mom gave me piano lessons. Like I was allowed to do choir and musical theater my whole life, and jazz band, and it was like, but like I guess the tacit understanding was that those things were only like supposed to be a means of getting me into the best college possible.
Okay.
So that the resume, the high school resume, looked good for that. And then once college was over, the idea was that it was like, all right, like that's the fun and games are over. Yeah. But like you can't like do that to someone. Like I feel you can't tell someone, yes, please attach your whole identity growing up to this thing. But like when you turn 21, it's got to go. Yeah. Like you can't like shut that off, It's all of a sudden just because.
It's so strange to me. Well, it's not strange. I totally understand it, and I don't know if I respect it, but I understand it. But
yes,
it's a conversation that I have with so many people, and it's not necessarily just in like Korean, Chinese, Japanese. Like in the UK, it's like hugely in like the Pakistani and Indian. It's pretty much any immigrant that comes to the West, I guess.
Absolutely.
And, which I understand, they come from somewhere less fortunate than what we are in the UK or America or Canada, and then they want their kids to have the best possible life, and it's the best possible life in their eyes is become a doctor or work in tech or something like that.
Totally. I mean, they, our parents and that generation come from more of a scarcity mindset, which is so understandable based on what they went through.
Totally.
And, from their experience, the way to combat scarcity is to make money. Yeah. And there's just a handful of jobs that they've seen around them that will give you that.
Yeah.
You know, well, that will give you that money, will give you steady money, will give you dependable income and lots of it. And that's, you know, that's success for them. And that's great. I mean, that's what allowed, you know, us to have the freedoms that they never did. But it's hard for them to make that switch of like, okay, I worked my ass off so that my kid could have freedoms.
Yeah.
And I've got to be open to whatever freedoms they want to now explore, right? Like it's hard for them because they're like, what are you doing? This seems dangerous, or, you know, but
well, there's also a level of control, I think.
Yeah.
Because America's a very expensive place to live, generally.
Oh, so expensive.
And like universities are expensive and everything's, and I do find,
don't even get us started on that.
Exactly. But I do find like, and it's the same in the UK, I would say, it's nowhere near as expensive, but like with parents kind of paying for their kids to kind of live and to kind of have a standard of living, but they also hold that control over their kids. And I'm not saying that's you in your situation, but I think I see it a lot. Whereas like, if you as a human being the child and your parents are trying to control, like, go and do your own thing and prove that you don't need their financial support.
Right.
Because
that's kind of the only way that you break.
Maybe I don't know. Like I don't know. I didn't experience that. So I think like, what would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what you described is, you know, very much like similar to my situation. Like, I was very fortunate, you know, in that my parents were able to put me through college and through private university, which is not cheap. And I'm very thankful for that. But as a result, you know, there was always this expectation of like, well, we put you through college. Are you like going to do nothing with this expensive degree that we got you, you know? And I don't want to say that they held it over my head in some kind of like toxic way, but you know, there was always this understanding that like, you know, you were very fortunate to have had this experience and you have this amazing degree. Like, please don't
waste it.
Let it go to waste. You know, and that was very important to me too, because like I was very, you know, grateful to my parents. And so that was the lifelong struggle. That was what kept me in these other jobs. And that's what, you know, because I was like, can't waste this degree, you know, can't let them down, can't disrespect them, you know? Yeah.
I don't know about you, but for me is like a huge part of me growing up is wanting to make my parents proud of me as well. And I think like wanting to make your parents proud sometimes means that you have to do what they want you to do, which...
I mean, almost always means you have to do what they want you to do. Until you can kind of like shift their perspective somehow, right? And so like eventually that's what I was able to do with this DJing thing. But it took time, and it took like going up against them in a way and kind of like defending myself, and the initial conversations were like not pleasant, you know, like those conversations were rough. Like you know, some tears were shed on both sides. Like it was a very like emotional thing for some reason to discuss my music career.
So was it a discussion where you had with them beforehand, or did you quit and were like, I'm going to deal with it after I've quit?
That like kind of like ask for and then ask for forgiveness later. And like initially, so I had quit in 2017, and that whole year I basically I feel bad, but I kind of strung my parents along like the whole year. Like I was like, I'm interviewing, you know, I was not interviewing. Well, I was maybe interviewing initially, like in the first 6 months after quitting. Like I had a couple, and I think like I did that even for myself to feel like, just in case, you know, like if I wanted to go back, I want to like, you know, have one foot still there and stay fresh on like, you know, my interview game and whatnot. And so like, you know, my mom would check in, how are the interviews going? And for the first 6 months, I had a couple, and I would update her on how they went, but I never put enough effort into them really, where it's like I made sure that like I wouldn't get the job, if that makes sense. Yeah. like I put like just enough effort into like, not be embarrassing in the interview, but like I definitely didn't go above and beyond to be like that I'm the candidate that you need, because like I didn't really want the job. Yeah. And so like, I was like, after 6 months of this, I was like, what am I doing? This is insane to be interviewing when you don't want the job and to keep doing this. I was like, this charade is like, I don't know, like what kind of strange loop I've like gotten myself into, but this is not it. And then, a year in, my mom is like, okay, like, is there something wrong with you? Like that no one wants to hire you? Like it's been a year of alleged interviewing and like you haven't gotten a new job yet. And
I like that it lasted a year. Like that's,
so
that's pretty solid.
It's very solid. Yeah. My parents live in Korea still.
Okay.
So like, they're so far away that I think that like that it just makes it easier to kind of like keep that distance, but, eventually I had to be like, all right, look, guys, I'm really sorry, but like, I'm just like not going back to work. And they were like, what do you mean you're not going back to work? Like, like, are you retired? Is there, some retirement fund that like we don't know about? And I was like, no, I've actually been working very hard. I just like haven't told you what I've been working on. And it's not going to look like me in an office ever again. And they're like, well, what have you been working on? And I was like, I've been learning how to DJ.
Yeah.
And that was the start of a series of not so pleasant conversations.
I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when they put the phone down from you on that first conversation in their house. Like, I couldn't even imagine.
Oh, the two of them for sure, like were just distraught, like all night, just like going in on me together. Just why do we have a daughter like this? Yeah. Like how did she from us, like how did we birth this like rebellious, like crazy person? Like, cause like my mom is so straight edged, she's like probably never gotten in trouble for anything in her life. So me turning out this way has probably just still is such a mystery to them. But now they're very excited for me and they're happy.
I think it takes time, right? For some people. And
it does.
I like that they're supportive now. Because
I mean, now my mom's the cutest. Like now she like knows other DJs by name, and she's like, oh my God, like the other week she was like, I forget what Marshmallow came up for some reason. And she was like, oh, like he played at the Brooklyn Mirage the weekend before you did. And I was like, what? I was like, how do you know that? Like, how do you even know who Marshmallow is? She's like, oh, like I have my ways. She's like, I know. I was like, okay, Mom. She's like, he's the guy with like the mask, like the white, like thing over his head. I was like, oh my gosh, she's not playing. She doesn't know who he is. Like,
she's gone in.
Mind blown.
Now, when she accepted it, she went in.
That's the thing with her, is once she is accepting of something, she's like, she goes like, she does the deepest dive into it of anybody.
Which I love. I love that. How does that make you feel?
Oh my gosh. It's just so, there's no words. There's no words for how good that makes me feel. And like, so I want to say that like, I finally sensed that they were coming around and had like given me their blessing in 2019. So like right after I played with you and Option 4 at Sound, the next month I flew out to Korea to play at Ultra Korea. And that was the first time I played at a festival. And I was like, oh my gosh, I get to bring my parents to like my first festival gig ever. And that was the turning point for all of it. Like them seeing, they had never seen me DJ before, and like them seeing me play on the stage at this like festival, I think was just very, very eye-opening for them. Like, I think they pictured what we do to just be like us playing music in like very, very seedy, like sketchy, like venues with like lots of like illicit things going on around us, which like
only 80 that's only 80% of the time.
I'm like, Mom, don't worry, it's only 90% of the time. But like it's, first of all, it's a daytime festival, and like, like people are dressed all nice, and like it's in Korea in the daytime. And I don't know, I think it was just very different from what they pictured. They were like, oh, this is nice. Oh, people like do this in the daytime. It's not just like, 4 a.m. in some like really sketchy part of like the world. They were like, oh, and like there's production value here. And like they were just like, oh, this is maybe not what we expected in a good way. And
that was probably a good one to take them to.
Exactly. And I've never taken them really like anywhere else. Like that was it. Like that's all they needed, But I could tell that there was like just a huge shift after that. And like I felt like I had their blessing. And like I think that is that sort of like takes us into kind of the momentum, that you feel, that you said like you've noticed in the last year and a half. Like I feel like I just got like kind of this like the wind underneath my wings or whatever. Like after I felt that I had gotten my parents' blessing, it just like changed everything for me. It made me feel like, okay, like I can do this career, and there doesn't have to be like an expiration date on this, because like my parents aren't just like counting down the days for me to like fail, or like counting down the days for me to like tell them that like, all right, I'm like putting the hobby away,
Yeah. No, I love that. So then when that happened in 2019 and you got back to LA, what was the kind of plan of action? Was there a plan of action, or were you just rolling with it?
I was just rolling with it. Yeah. And like, in a lot of ways, my career has just kind of been that. Like, I've always had a loose vision of like the sound I'm trying to make, and where I want to see myself in the long run. But as far as like the process of executing on that, I've kind of just been rolling with things. And like, I'm like, as long as I'm making music I want to make and just being myself and being nice to people along the way and having fun, I feel like that will take me where I'm meant to go. Right. Like if you're being yourself the entire way of the journey, then like you can only end up where you're supposed to, because like you're being you. So
I think that's, sorry to buy in, but I think that's like without sounding condescending, because this isn't condescending at all, it's a compliment, but it's like one of the most mature things somebody can say at such an early point in their career. And like, I don't think maybe because you're older than you're not a 21-year-old trying to work out who you are. I think
like I've lived life.
You've lived a life, you've earned money, you've traveled, you're from a different country, you have a lot of life. Which I think is so important for people to experience and to kind of find themselves. But I think you going in with that attitude is like, I wish I knew that, like at that early on, if you know what I mean, because it takes so long for anyone to get there, and for you to be realistically a couple years into your music career and know that, like, that's gold mine.
I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. But like you said, I think that just stems from like having had a working career up until this point, like I think what's hard, okay, let's put it this way. I can't imagine having a music career specifically where, it's so fragile a lot of the time. And it's so like different from a lot of other careers in that like, well, it's creative. You're putting yourself out on the line, and you're putting, your art and your output and your personality and, just yourself out for everyone to judge, basically. And that's the career versus like, I don't know, like working in tech, for example, right? Like it's a very different kind of career. And so I can't imagine having your self-discovery journey like coincide with like starting a music career, meaning like, I don't think I would have survived being in my 20s trying to start like this music career. You know what I mean? Like I was able to do my self-discovery and kind of all that, like, I think in a less vulnerable kind of career. So like I was able to sort of sort that all out and then arrive at music at a much more mature place in my life, I think.
I love that. How did you deal with the rejection of the music industry when you first started or now? Because I feel like there's so much rejection in this music industry, whether that's music, like just generally. I was talking to Born Dirty the other day, and he's like one of my best mates. We talk for hours every day, and we were just like, this industry is 90% rejection and 10% people liking what you do. And whether that's rejection from somebody else, whether that rejection's from you, whether that rejection's from an agent, a manager, a promoter, a club, a fan, like there's more, for me, there's more no's than yeses. How does that bide from, like, how did you deal with that? Because I don't know, do you get that in the tech world when you're working in corporations? Because you're not a decision maker.
Much.
Yeah, you're not a decision maker, right? Like
you're not as much. I mean, I will say, like, so being a product manager specifically, like in that role, and particularly when you're in that role at like a startup where like the company's smaller and like the degrees of separation between you and the CEO are like sometimes zero. There's a fair bit of that because like I had to work very closely with the CEOs of these startups, and so like I'd be presenting them things, and there was a lot of no's. But so to kind of back up for one second, before I worked in tech, I actually did work in music for 2 years, but I worked on the business side of things. So like one of my first jobs out of college, I was a talent management assistant in New York City for like a management and publishing company that managed and looked after pop artists, hip hop artists. So very different from like the dance music world, but like, you know, one of the big clients that comes to mind that we had at the time was CeeLo Green. And this was in like from 2010 to 12. So that's when I was with him. And that was right when he was popping off for like, cause he had just won the Grammy for Fuck You. And which was a massive song. And then it was right before and as he became a judge on The Voice. Like the team that I was working for was responsible for putting him on that show. And so like I remember like being on like conference calls with Mark Burnett, who was the producer, you know, of that show, and Survivor, and legend of on television. But just listening in on those initial conversations, then the pitch that he was giving us on like why this show was going to be like cooler than American Idol, and why CeeLo should be on it. They were describing like the technology of the cameras that they were going to use in this boxing ring, and I was just like, what the hell is this? This this is a singing contest show? Like what? And I couldn't visualize it, but like now we know. Now we've come to know how that all worked out, and he was not kidding. Like they really, I don't know. Anyway, so like I have memories of this and being on the business side of music. And I want to say like weirdly, I feel like most of the rejection in my life, at least in my adult life, in that job. Like, so all the while as I was working by day as a talent management assistant, like once again, like deep down, I wanted to be writing music like for myself, and I wanted to be an artist, and I didn't know in what capacity. I knew I didn't want to be a pop star. Like that didn't seem appealing to me. But I loved music. I did music my whole life. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I don't need to be forward facing, but like, I want to become like a killer songwriter, and I want to be writing top lines for like Katy Perry and Rihanna and artists like that. And maybe I want to like, you know, get signed to like a publishing company, like with Dr. Luke at the time or something like that. So I'd be like, you know, answering phone calls and doing my assistant stuff by day, and then like going home and like writing music on GarageBand by myself, writing demos and top line ideas and whatnot. And like, eventually I started to like try and show some of these ideas to the A&Rs at my company. And like, of course they were just like, they just like barely gave me the time of day. You know, and I don't know if that experience is like universal to like everyone, or if it was just kind of like the people at my company that I worked for kind of had that vibe, but like they were not very encouraging at all. I think it was a lot of.
I think it is at the beginning of everyone's career, unless you've had like something that's popped off super early, and kind of like you've had that, let's be honest, luck at the beginning of your career. Like I think everyone's just like, who the fuck's this person?
Totally. And it just was extra hurtful because I was like, you know, I work with you guys. Like it shouldn't be like, who the fuck's this person? You know, like I'm part of the team. But there was very much this attitude of like, just stay
in your lane.
And like, and I just kept pushing, you know, because I wasn't going to give up that easily. And so like I tried to show them my value, you know, as an A&R. And I tried to show them like, you know, that I have a good ear in other ways. And so like, I remember I brought a couple acts to the company, and one in particular, they went like absolutely crazy for, and they wanted to sign them like right on the spot. And it was a group that I had like 2 of the members or 3 of the members of the group I had gone to college with, and they had formed this band, and they were called Delta Ray. And I think they had just signed on with like Warner Brothers Records, but they needed management or something like that. And so, or publishing, I forget which one. So I brought them into the company, and the company went crazy for them, immediately wanted to sign them, was courting them hardcore, and they ended up going with someone else. But like, I thought, you know, after something like that, that maybe they'd be like, all right, you know, she's got a great ear, you know, and that they would take me a little more seriously. But like, no, like once that was over, it was back to like, it was like nothing had ever happened, you know,
back to business.
And so
I feel like it might be different nowadays.
I hope so. I really hope so, because that was like a really traumatizing kind of like deflating experience straight out of college to be in music and feel that, be made to feel that way, you know? And
I think I agree with you, but on counter to that, I think it's really healthy to a certain extent, because I think it, like for me, if everyone in my life or in my career, especially music career, had said yes from day one, I wouldn't be where I'm at. I'd be somewhere very different, and my music would be something very different. And I remember for me, like I quit DJing and writing music for like 6 months, and like tried to open a nightclub because I was so fed up with writing music, because I was at the point where I wrote a record that everyone was playing. Jamie Jones, MK, Eats Everything, Seth Troxler, and that was when they were all like huge, like when they just like got massive, and they were all playing this record of mine, and I was like, damn, Jamie's playing it, I need to write music that works for Hot Creations, which completely fucked my head, because I was like, I now need to go make Hot Creations record, not thinking, well, Jamie's just playing the record that I've made. Like, that's me.
Totally.
It's not like...
Yes.
But,
I know.
And
I know.
And then I spent 6 months trying to write records for Hot Creations, and him turning down every record because it wasn't it wasn't me. So then I was like, I give up. But if I didn't go through that, would I be writing the records I write today? Would I be the person who I am today? Like I think rejection's it's so rough. Like I get it still now. Like I'll ask people to do a remix of a record and they say no, and I'm like, fuck. Like but I'm also the person of rejection as well. Like people are asking me and I say no. Like people send me records and be like, do you want to sign it? No. Like, but I think it's really important, because I think it makes you who you are as an artist.
Absolutely. You're so right. And, you know, in hindsight, I've processed that, you know, that value from that time.
Yeah.
But like, you know, when you're 23,
it's rough.
Just starting out, it's rough. And, you know, I hadn't yet even gone on my self-discovery journey yet either. So like I had a lot of like insecurities and things. I was just a very fragile, emotionally fragile woman back then, or young woman. Yeah. And so it was a lot to take, you know, and, but so anyway, I felt like that period of my life was just full of rejection. And so to fast forward to now, to answer your question about like, how do I deal with rejection now? You know, I don't want to sound, I hope this doesn't come off as sort of any kind of way, but I feel like, I almost feel like I paid so much of my like rejection dues back then that like, I feel like I face a lot less of it now.
Yeah.
Like, And, I'm a very like spiritual person in the sense that like I believe a lot in like the universe and energy and things like that and karma and whatnot. And I look for signs from the universe always to kind of like validate, like, am I moving in the right direction?
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard to pinpoint, well, what are those signs? Like they may take different forms and sometimes it's a feeling, but like, for example, I felt very early on that like, once I really got going with this music stuff, that it was like green light after green light. You know that feeling when you're driving and it's like every light's a green light and you're like, wow, I'm really like flying today. And that's the best analogy that I can give in terms of how my music career felt like from day one, kind of. And I just took that as the ultimate sign from the universe. Like, all right, it's giving me green light after green light. Like, I'm not going to question this. I just got to keep going.
Yeah. I love that.
And it was so different from any other time ever in my working life. Like even in tech, I experienced so many more red lights, so many more yellow lights. Like there were so many jobs in tech that I didn't get. I tried to get a job at Spotify, on the tech side, so many times. You don't know how many times I applied for this job, that job, never. They wouldn't even give me an interview, what's funny is I also wanted to work at SoundCloud at one point, this is back in 2013. And like, I met with some of like the senior engineers in the New York office and all that. And like, it was, in the end, it was like, no, you're not experienced enough. And now like, I've got a great relationship with SoundCloud, like as an artist. And it's just like, it's just crazy because I think back to like I remember living life back then and thinking, I guess this is just life. Like, I guess life is just a series of like frustrating starts and stops, more stops than starts. And like, I guess this is just life, And it wasn't until I went down this path in music that I was like, holy shit, like life can feel this way. Like it can just feel like green light after green light. And I had never felt that in my life ever. And I'm getting emotional now, but like,
it's amazing to hear that though, because like I've not really spoke to many people on the podcast where their whole goal where it wasn't their whole goal in their life to become a DJ or a producer or an athlete or a chef. It was always, that was their one goal. And I think deep down inside, you would happily say that was your goal, but you just hadn't accepted it. But I think I haven't spoke to people on the podcast that have gone through the corporate life for as long as you did and then came out of it. And the way you're coming at the industry is so refreshing because you're not jaded. Maybe that's not the right word. It feels like you're just loving every minute of it, which is so nice to hear because it's so easy for us. I don't know, but like I've had very, very brief conversations with you in a nightclub, but we haven't ever really properly spoke. But there's something about it which I haven't experienced in a long time, where someone just seems super happy with where they're at in life. And I think it's so easy nowadays for us to, I can only speak for myself, but it's easy for me to be very kind of not necessarily grateful of where I'm at. I'm a very very grateful person, and I know that I'm very lucky with where I've got and what I've got. But for me, it's like always what's next. Where for me, when I'm talking to you, it feels like I know there's that drive. I 100% know there's that drive because you wouldn't be where you're at.
Talk to Mark. He's gonna be like, he's gonna be like, what do you mean you're always happy? What do you mean?
But it just feels like everything's like seems to be working out in a way that you didn't ever expect you were ever gonna have, and that's insane.
I mean, I don't want to say like, never expected, because obviously, if I didn't think that I could get where I want to get, I don't think I would have started. I'm a very sort of like intense person that way. Like if I'm going to do something, I want to like, I'm competitive, but like with myself, But that said, even though I had confidence in myself that I could figure it out, like, you're right. Like, you still don't know on what timeline these things are going to work out for you, or what it's going to look like when it arrives. And like, all of this has just taken me by a lot of surprise. And, to circle back again to something that you had said earlier about, you noticed that it was during the pandemic that, it seemed like I kind of started popping up more, or my name started coming up more. And, the correlation there is very much tied to like, that's when I started putting out music. Yeah. So like, I put out my first original music in 2020.
How was that?
So I guess it makes sense. Sometimes when I share like my story, I'm like, I hope this doesn't just sound like the just like the most like noob stuff ever. But like, okay, I have to share with you this story because like, and I feel comfortable to share with you, and I want people to know, I want you to know that like, it can be like this, that not everything is this like super, I don't know, like controlled thing, right? But like, so I started learning how to produce in 2018, and like from like June to October, I took some classes. Yeah. And so like, that's the first time I ever used Ableton. And then 2019, I was still sort of trying to like hone my skills, but like by then I was still only like a year into producing, very, very rough. And I had all these like little demos and ideas that I'd started. And then the pandemic hit, and like for the first 3 months, I was just like not motivated to do anything. I mean, I was just in shock, So like, I want to say that like right away, as soon as I realized I had free time, that I was doing nothing but producing music, but like, that's not true. I was really just like crying in a corner for like 3 months. But finally in like April or so, Yado had messaged me and was like, hey, like, do you have any like music laying around that like you'd want to share? And I'm thinking, oh man, like I don't have like anything that I've like produced this year. Like if I'm going to show him anything, it's going to be like stuff that I made like in 2019. Yeah. And then I was like, also so naive, like to your point about, I'm like, just like, I seem so fresh at all this. Like I had never really been asked by anyone for demos. Yeah. Like, honestly. And like, he didn't say, hey, do you have demos for my label? You know what I mean? Like, he just was like, hey, like, do you have any music like you'd want to like share, like for me to listen to? It was like something super so casual that I like didn't understand what he was asking for. And so I was thinking the whole time, oh, how nice of him, like as a mentor to like offer to like, like listen to like my shitty like tracks and like give me some like, feedback, right? Like that's how I was seeing this. So I was like, okay, what are like the least embarrassing things that I could like show him, So I put together the SoundCloud link of like a couple things, and I'm like, here, like, this is sort of like what I've been working on, like super rough, like, but this is, I don't know, this is just like, this is who I am right now. Yeah. Thanks for listening, and then, he listens, and I'm shocked that he even listened. I don't know why. I thought he was just being polite to ask. And then he gets back to me the next day and is like, cool. Yeah. Like these were nice. Like, very rough, very raw. And I'm like, here it is. Here's that, he's like, these are very rough and very raw, but in the rawness, I do hear you, and it's very interesting. And I like that, but like, nice work. I was like, okay. I was like, wow, that's cool feedback. Yeah. He let me down gently, you know? And I was like, that's as well as it could have gone. And I'm like, all right, well, back to making more raw music, like that has me in it. Like that really resonated with me. And then the next day he's like, so I actually like sat on these again overnight, and then I like shared them with my team, and like everyone agrees that these are like really dope actually. Like, what's the status on them? And I'm just like, oh, what does he mean by status? Like, no, literally, I was like, oh, well, they're like obviously not like finished, but like I'm still working on them. Like, that's the status. And he's like, oh, great. So like, they're not signed anywhere. And I'm like, signed anywhere? Like, it was like, absolutely not. Like, what? Like, the status is that these are not done. And I'm like, still working on them. And he's like, great. Well, like, I'd like to take them if like, they're not going anywhere else. And I was like, like take them like for your label? He's like, yes, I would like to sign these like to my
That's
label.
amazing.
And I was like, what? Like I couldn't even process, because you have to understand where my mind was at. Like I thought I was just like doing show and tell with Yotto. Like,
he's also one of the nicest guys as well. He's like super nice. So
nice.
Yeah.
I mean, all of you guys, you're super nice.
We try.
Like, so that's how I got, my first EP out with Odd One Out. And
that's mad.
And that's kind of just like how it's gone for me. Like similarly, I sent 2 records to Danny Howard, just 2. I picked 2 out that, I had this fascination with his label for a bit. So like that thing with Yotto happened. And then like 2 months later, 3 months later, I had the idea to like try and send some music to Danny. And I picked out just 2 of my music. And honestly, I pretty much only had like 4 other tracks total that I'd ever made. So like from a remaining library of like 5 or 6 ideas, because Yotto had just taken 2, right? Like I had like 5 viable ideas
stealing
left.
all your music.
So like literally at this point, I have like all of 7 tracks I've ever like started or made in my entire catalog. And I had 2 that I was like, I feel like Danny could maybe be into these. And these sound like they could maybe work for like Nothing Else Matters. And I just had this fascination with that label because I listened to all this stuff and I really liked it. And like, I thought maybe these 2 tracks could fit in. And so I had them sent over to him, and like, we didn't hear back for a couple of months, but like we kept pushing and just being like, hey, has he listened? Has he listened? And finally someone on his team got him to listen. And then right away, he would like, once he listened, like, I think within like the next day or 2, he was like, what's the status on these? But this time I was like, I know what that means. Now I know what that question means. And we were like, well, we'd like to sign them with your label if you're interested. Yeah. And he was like, yes. He was like, yes. And he was like, actually, these would fit perfect on the label right now because we're in lockdown, and I'm like shifting the focus of my label to be like at home kind of dance music, at home listening versus club music.
Yeah.
And that was just so, like, the timing of that was just luck for me, like basically if I had sent him these tracks now, he may not have signed them because he might have been like, these aren't clubby enough.
Yeah.
So there's just like, I honestly feel that aside from the emotional damages that the pandemic caused and some of the financial havoc that it wreaked, in terms of my music career as an artist, it was like, I benefited so heavily from it. Like people who wouldn't have had the time to like listen to my demos had the time to listen to my demos, And
I think I think this keeps on coming up in conversations, that there's been a lot of artists that it's screwed over and kind of ended their careers, but I'm a firm believer of when something ends, something new happens. And
because that energy it's all energy, right? Yeah. And energy never disappears. It just gets transferred.
Yeah, totally. And I think the pandemic allowed people to work out who they are, because we were just we were alone for so long, just twiddling our thumbs. And I think a lot of people had to process things. A lot of people had to kind of change and evolve and kind of rework out what's happened. The podcast came out of the pandemic. Like a lot of things, even for me, like I released a lot of music. It was weird. I started my label in 2020. The first record came out in January, and then my biggest record came out in April when we were locked down. And it's weird how it all kind of happened, but I think there's been a lot of artists that I've spoken to that have came out of the pandemic purely because it was a time where people had more time and
absolutely
and could really refocus themselves. And I think
absolutely,
I think it's
like I was able to do a bunch of really cool collabs with artists who would otherwise probably have been running around touring and not able to sit down and make a song with me. Like, Josh Butler comes to mind, Book of Shade come to mind. Like, these guys are normally very busy, you know, touring and playing gigs, and all of a sudden they had time on their hands to make more music, and they were down to collaborate with more vocalists and make that kind of music, and I directly benefited from that.
I love both those records that you put out. The Josh Butler and the Booker Shade records are great. I love them.
Thank you.
What was your like first record that you were like, damn, this record's doing well?
So
they've all done well. I'm not
weird, but
they've all done well, but I'm like, I feel like as an artist, there's a time where you're like, damn, this is doing something.
I guess I could speak to like the one that of my catalog, of like my solo catalog. So, you know, a track that isn't like a collab or anything, like the one that has like the most streams right now. And like, it's one of the first songs like I ever wrote as Sohmi, and it's a song that I wrote sort of so randomly. Like I wrote this thing right before the pandemic started, and to explain the inspiration for it, I had just played a show with Yotto at Sound. So actually I had opened for him at the Fonda, and then ran over and opened his after party at Sound. And he was so kind that to like do a back-to-back with me that night, like before he hopped on. And, you know, I was just like, wow, like I had never even done like a public B2B before. So my first public B2B was with Yotto, and I was like losing my mind. And I had met all kinds of cool people backstage that night. And one of the people that I had met was this woman who at the time, she was Zed's marketing manager. She came right up to me and was like, I really loved your set, by the way, like I work for Zed. And I was like, holy shit, like what? Okay.
Just drop that one,
just drop that. Yeah. And she was like, so let's, you know, I don't know, like let's stay in touch. And I was like, yeah, let's, you know. And I went home that night just buzzing and so inspired. And I was like, could I write like a dance pop song to like show to Zed? I was like, I don't know, like could I do that? It's like, is that something I even want to do as an artist? I wasn't sure. I'm like still figuring it out, but I was like, let's write a demo for Zed. That was like the impetus for this thing. So I was like, it doesn't have to be a club track per se, but like, you know, something that he would write with like a Maren Morris or something like that, you know? So I went home, I went on Ableton like the next day after this like night that I was coming off of. And I wrote this like little pop song, not a club song at all. It's like 108 or 110 BPM, you know, and just wrote this thing. And the idea was to like send it to her and have her maybe like show Zed and see like,
if he likes it.
Yeah. If he liked it, if something could come of it. And I don't know if that ever happened, but I ended up showing the song to a couple friends. And one of them was like, you should show this to Astralworks. Like, this is good. And I was like, really? Like, show it to the labels? He's like, yeah, like, I think you should show this to them. And we did. And they ended up wanting to sign it. And I was like, what? Like, it's just like with so many of the things in my life, I just was like, what's going on? And so
that's one you to love me, right?
Yeah. And so like, it was just, I just didn't really know like what this song was going to do, because it didn't sound like anything else that I've put out. It's not a club record. I didn't really know like where it could even be played. I only for the first time ever played it out at Day Trip Festival last weekend. Like, I've never played this song out because like you can't mix into it. You can only like close with it or open with it. Like, it's just not, you can't, I haven't figured out as a DJ how I go from like 125 to just gracefully mixing into like 108, you know? Without making it super weird and slow. So like, but this thing came out in August of 2020. So like during the pandemic, and like it, you know, it never really got playlisted on any like of the major, you know, editorial playlists or anything, but like it's coming up on 500,000 streams now, and it keeps going. It keeps going, and like the daily stream numbers are actually like higher than they ever were now 2 years later. And I'm like, what's going on with this record? Like, what is this? So yeah, I'd say this is the one that comes to mind, that I'm like, how does this have 500,000 streams? Like, it's never been played anywhere. Like, it's not a club record that anyone would have Shazammed on a dance floor or at a festival. Like, I don't know.
It's mad, isn't it? It's mad. And I think that's the amazing thing about music, is that once it's out, it's not yours. It's it's the universes, and
it is.
I've got a record at the moment, and it's just like I don't understand why it's doing so well, and I like it's fucking ridiculous. I literally had a conversation with my manager, and we're talking like strategies of next single and things like that, and I'm like, I've just today finished. I've had this record that I've got planned to come out in August, and I haven't been 100% with it for months, and I just finished a version that I'm like, fuck yeah, I've nailed it. And like it's taking me months to do it, and then I'm like, I should just write something that takes me 3 hours, because the record that's doing so well at the moment, I literally wrote in like 2.5 hours, and I'm just like, I just don't
That's
understand
what this
this.
song was. Okay, it's got like literally, if you look at the project file, it's got like 8 tracks. You know, like I recorded the vocals on my like home microphone, and I wrote the thing in like 2.5 hours.
Yeah, it's mad,
like what? Yeah, like sometimes, but I'm sure this one that you're talking about that has taken all these drafts is also awesome. Like sometimes it takes all that, you know. Like
it does. It really does. I think there's parts of it though when when something takes so long, does the vibe get lost? I don't know. Because I feel like all my biggest records have actually literally been like 2-3 hours in the making.
Wow.
And then like my Searching, I don't know if you know my record Searching, it did pretty well, but that took a while. But like all the ones that like my mates play and all the ones that like do well in the clubs are like literal just vibes. It's weird though, but then it's like also what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to step out of the club a little bit with some of the records, and it's like you have to take more time on those records because
I think so.
They're listening records.
I think so, and like, yeah, I just wouldn't let the amount of time that a record has taken like preclude it from being considered as like a contender for, you know, the next release. Or
it's
whatever.
Just fucking annoying. You got this record that's like taking hours and it's fucking killing, and then you got a record that takes like 6 months to make and it doesn't do anything. You're like, I spent all this time. I deserve this.
I know. And like, I'm going to be guilty of that soon myself, even as I'm trying to like, you know, console you. But like, just, I guess like as artists, we have to like learn to not attach how much time we put into something as like the measure of really anything, you know, and we should just be happy. Maybe we should just take it as like an average. Like some tracks will take 2 hours, some will take 2 years, and you know the rough average of that.
I agree, but I also think how we measure in success in that situation. Like the way I'm measuring that record is that based on the number of streams, or based on the amount of people that are playing it. What is a successful record in like what should a successful record be when we're measuring success? And I guess that just depends on what your kind of definition of success is.
I think this is super intangible, but like one good measure of success for me and it's really the only measure that matters to me, I think, is kind of how many people in the audience like get excited and scream when you start mixing it in.
Yeah.
You know, like, because, you know, nowadays there are so many like editorial playlists that have such a big following, but people are listening to that stuff very passively.
Yeah.
You know, like they'll turn on the playlist when they're cooking or whatever. So like they're not even really necessarily paying attention to what's playing. But you know, if your track has like a good position on that list, like you might be racking up the streams, right? So like on paper, there might be a record that has 3 million streams, and like no one, it could still be that like no one knows what that record is. Totally. It just happened to be like position number 5 on like a really good playlist, but like no one's actively been listening to that record. Yeah. Right. So like, whereas like, you know, I have songs that, you know, have less than 100,000 streams where like every time I mix this thing in, you know, like people like are like so excited.
Yeah.
They're like, yes, they can hear it being mixed in. And like, they're like, and then I get DMs afterwards, like, I literally came to your show just to hear that live. Thank you for playing it. And I'm like, wow, like people know what this record is. Like it doesn't have all the streams, you know, but like.
Well, I think that's the issue, isn't it? Is that we go by a lot nowadays, a lot of success is based on streams or followers. And I think that's where the business side of it gets a bit messy, because I think that's where you can have kind of a pissing match with other artists, and kind of you can start comparing yourself to other artists and things like that.
Totally.
Do you ever do that?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. I was like, I wonder if he's going to ask if I do that. Like, cause like you have this image of me as being like this like
fucking
super
angel.
happy about it. And here I am, just like, if you only knew that. No. Well, so I'm a very analytical person. And, you know, as you know now, I come from a tech background and product management background. And like my entire job was to like run analysis on everything and optimize everything based on data.
Is that how you run your life as well, generally?
Like, it's hard to shut, it's hard to shut that off. And it's sometimes at odds with like being an artist, you know, cause like sometimes like you just can't give a fuck about that stuff, but like, and it'll get in the way of your artistry. But like, oh man, that's just how my brain is wired. And so of course I am looking at the data and the numbers all day long, you know, like, I mean, all day long. I mean, like that stuff is absolutely like in the back of my mind, like, you know, constantly. And it's weird. Like, I know all of it. I know all of my stats. It's like probably scary. Like I talk to people like Josh, for example, Josh Butler, and he's just like, I love how detached he is. You know, like one day he was like, he said something and he just had like no idea like where his streaming numbers were or where anything was sitting at. And I was like, oh, that sounds so nice. Like, oh, I wish I had no idea where any of my shit was, you know, like I wish I didn't know. I wish I didn't look. So like, unfortunately, like in some ways I'm like really dialed into that, but then in other ways, like I'm also able to like, just be like, okay, but so what, you know?
That's the process that to get to that level, to get to that point where it's like, yeah, I care about this, but there's nothing I can do out of the ordinary. It's not like you can ask somebody to change it. It's got to change itself. No. Or somebody, one of the powers at Spotify or Apple or Radio 1 or whatever that is, they are the only people that can change that. And if you've done everything out of your way to get it to those people to hear it, and it's still not getting playlisted, or fans aren't listening to it, or there's so many factors in how to promote a record that you just never know. And you can have a checklist and you can do the same thing for every single record, and every single record is going to perform differently.
Right. That's such a good point that you make. That's such a good point. Like that just proves how little of this we actually can control.
This is what I say is like, I say that I'm lucky, and everyone always kind of like says, no, you're not lucky. You've worked hard for this. And I'm like, yeah, I've worked hard, but I'm so lucky. Like the fact that we're having this conversation, we're both lucky, because
we're so lucky.
Like how many other people are trying to get a percentage of what we have, as in our careers, our lives. And every step of our life has kind of taken us to where we're at right now. And yes, hard work gets put into that, but majority of it is luck.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more. I feel so grateful every day, despite the rough days, despite the days where things don't work out, you know, and despite, you know, the mental health challenges and all of that, like I'm still so, I make sure that I speak like my gratitude out loud, or think it out loud to the universe every day. Like I know I keep talking about the universe, but like I'm so
it's
passionate
fine.
about.
You
like,
moved to LA.
idea.
It's fine. I get it.
Quick, let me hide the crystals like floating around my room.
There's one there. I see a salt rock.
Damn it. But no, it's just like I feel like I have such a good relationship with it. Like I feel like we communicate on the reg, you know?
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
like I feel like it speaks to me and I speak to it, and that's part of my luck. Like I feel like having the universe on my side is part of my luck, and I want to keep it that way. And I feel like so much of it is like having a good relationship with it, you know? It's like speak to it, like think conscious thoughts of gratitude. Like even if I mean, okay, I'm not literally sitting in my room speaking out loud having a conversation with the universe, but like I'm thinking these thoughts, you know, and I'm being very, very conscious every day of like what I'm grateful for. And I think it does something. I don't think it does nothing, you know. I think it has some impact, even if you can't see it and it's not tangible. Like I think it just keeps the train going.
Well, I think it does something for you internally, which is why you do it. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I think it's easy to, it's like that positive, it's the saying of the positive mental attitude. Like, whatever works for you works.
Yeah.
But realistically, if you're being positive about yourself, you're not being negative, you're kind of putting good things out there, good things will come back, and you will attract that as well. If you're being a dickhead, if you're being super negative, that becomes your environment. And your environment, you are the creator of your environment. And I think if you stick to positivity and kindness and hard work and just willing to do whatever it takes to kind of get to where it will happen.
Yeah.
And I think as long as people don't feel that they, what's the word, owed something, and I think eventually it will come around. It might take years for somebody. It might take 10 years. It might, whereas it's taken this long, if you know what I mean.
Right.
But if it definitely comes around, there's space for everyone.
I agree.
And it isn't, the only real competition you have is with yourself. That's the thing that I've worked out over the last 3 years, is that I'm not competing with anyone else. Like, there's space for everybody in this world to DJ.
There is. I mean, like, nobody even looks like each other. You know what I mean? There isn't anyone that looks exactly like you or exactly like me. And then on top of that, like, there isn't anyone that makes the exact kind of music that you do or the exact kind of music that's just like, so yeah, unless there's a clone of you or I running around somewhere that's like the exact same person, like, of course there's room for everyone, because everyone's different, everyone's unique.
Yeah, unless you're trying to be somebody and copy somebody's music, which you're not, so it doesn't matter. No. There's plenty of that out there.
Right.
But
I feel like that could spark a whole other discussion or debate about, like, is there room for those people? Like do those people deserve room?
I think they deserve room, but I just don't think there's longevity. I think I truly think, like, I'd be lying if I hadn't tried to make music like somebody else at some point in my career.
Right.
To try and have their success. And then it made me realize that I don't need to do that to have, because I don't want their success. I want my success.
Yes.
And I can't have anybody else's success, but apart from your own. So yeah, I think there's room for everybody, and I think whatever way it takes somebody to get to where they want to get to, that is the journey of somebody's career in music, in life generally.
Totally.
I know I've got friends that were very successful artists, and then going into the pandemic, their whole career fell out their ass, and now they're managers and they're enjoying it more, or they're label A&Rs and they're enjoying it more than they ever did, and they were like, why didn't I do this beforehand? So I think there's everything. I'm a big believer is everything happens for a reason. It just takes time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the hard part, because we're all impatient.
Right? Fuck me. I'm the worst.
I'm so as
Jesus.
zen as I may seem and as happy as I may seem. I mean, I wrote a whole song about the concept of time. You know, I have a track literally called Time. And I wrote and I wrote this track kind of as a reminder to myself about time,
Yeah.
really itself. And to kind of how do I explain this? Like, so this, I mean, so that the hook is like, I don't want to waste my time on you, right?
Yeah.
Like that's just it. It's very simple.
Who hurt
And
you?
you could be anything, you know, like when I wrote that, it was like, I thought about like, you know, when there are toxic people in your life, you know, like, but also like obstacles or things that you fixate on that like you shouldn't be, just like anything that like distracts you
Yeah.
from, you know, your path and like what you're trying to do. Like that's who you is directed at. And it's just kind of a reminder to me about like both valuing my time, but also trying not to be too like obsessed about like time, you know, and that like, and to not wish to like rush time away, because in doing that, you're basically like rushing away the actual like living of life, of living through it. Like, you know,
It's tough, isn't it? Because I think when you're trying to have a career out of something, it's like, well, in 10 years' time, I'm going to be here. But I think it's what in the 10 years, in between those 10 years, what's the journey? And I'm a sucker for it. And I think coming out of COVID has helped me massively, but it's that process of am I actually happy? Am I actually enjoying the process of getting to where I want to get to? It takes time.
I think it does. And it's so important to like periodically make sure you ask yourself that. Like I'm going through that right now where, you know, this is the first year that I've really felt like I've, you know, been touring a bit. And I've had to like, you know, sort of take a step back and ask myself like, okay, that was fast. That happened and it's still happening, but like, how do I feel? You know, like, so it's so important to like ask yourself that along the way and not just like get swept up in the motion of things. And, you know, in asking myself that recently, I realized obviously like I'm so grateful for like all the touring I've been able to do this year and all the incredible shows I've been able to play. But like there has been an aspect of feeling a bit like I'm just kind of running around in a loop every weekend of like, and I mean, you know exactly how this feels. Just like, it's like Monday through Wednesday I have here, and then Thursday through Sunday I'm already like running off. Like my apartment is a mess, you know, like there's just things that like I haven't been able to like take care of in my personal life. And I'm also like finding that for me, like trying to squeeze in like production, like time on my laptop on the road, or like during those Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays that like I have, like that doesn't work for me. Like I so envy people who can just produce on the road. Like I hope one day that I get there, but like that's just not the way that I can make music yet. And I'm realizing that like, okay, what works for me is like probably going to be something that looks more like being on the road for X amount of the year and then taking intentional time off. And just like saying like no to any shows, and knowing that I've got this like 2-month block where like I can be at home, get my life in order, and like sit and create. Like I've just like, and it's taken time to like learn that about myself. Like I didn't know that this is how I was going to be.
It's interesting how it all works. And I think we're forever changing as human beings. So what works one year doesn't work the next year.
Right. That's true.
For me, it was like during COVID, I wrote so much music. Like
I remember that. You're like, I was like, Will is killing it. Like your stories, and you were always making music. And I was like, damn.
And then coming out of COVID, I didn't write anything I've always written music my whole like career. Since I was 16 years old, I've written music every single week at some point. And like I did 5 months of writing like barely 6 or 7 records, which is wild for me. And it got to me, like proper got me down, and it got me to a point where I'm like, can I actually even write music anymore?
Oh my gosh, that's how I feel all the time.
Yeah, and it's so depressing, but it's like, yes, you can, but you just have to work out. And like I'm working on a project at the moment where it's very different music writing compared to what I'm used to, and it's like pushing me, but I'm like, this is exactly what I needed. I didn't need to write another club record. I can write another club record, like, but I need something that actually like excites me. Like making club music doesn't excite me as much as it used to. So let's go write something else, or let's go and push the club music to like a different level. And I think that's what it took for me. But like, if I asked myself that 4 years ago, it wouldn't be that.
And right, because like that's not where your head was at 4 years ago.
Yeah. So it's really interesting how we all change.
That's what keeps it interesting. That's what keeps. Can you imagine just doing the same thing for 20 years?
Fuck that.
That's you know, no.
Yeah.
I that's like my worst nightmare. And so as scary as it is to have to like reassess yourself every year, every 6 months, and realize, oh my God, like I'm not excited anymore by what I was last year. Like that's a good thing, maybe.
Yeah, totally.
It's not a bad thing.
No, I like that a lot. We've just done over an hour and a half, and I could keep going, but I've got another podcast in 20 minutes to record.
Oh my God. Oh God. Okay.
So I've really enjoyed this conversation, but I kind of want to end it. I've been ending some of them. I've been asking a question, not every podcast, but I do on the ones that I feel is right. And there's a question is what advice would you give somebody? What life advice would you give somebody right now? Not necessarily to do with music, but just life advice. What would that be?
Oh, wow. Life advice.
It's tough, isn't it?
It's very tough. I mean, I'm like, there's a couple things that, you know, that I want to say, but,
you don't have to think too hard about it, because it can
hard.
change
Okay.
tomorrow. What you would say tomorrow is completely different, but it's like now, what is it now?
Now, okay. Now, I guess something that's very like real for me right now is taking care of your mental health, you know? And I would say, don't neglect that, really. Like, it's a real thing. You know, treat it as such, like, and you know, that what that looks like is going to be different for everyone, but like, just make sure that like you are taking a little bit of time every day to like do something that makes you happy, like for yourself, whether that's like going for a walk or like starting off your day with a little bit of stretching and yoga, like whatever it is for you. Like, don't let the grinding get so, you know, intense that like you don't give yourself that. And because I'm so guilty of that, that like, you know, recently I found myself kind of in like a dark place because I wasn't taking care of some of those things. And so just get your sunshine, get your stretching in. It seems so little and small and like, oh, how is that really going to like change anything? But you'd be so surprised. Like we are all such creatures of habit.
Yeah.
We don't even realize that, like, it's not even that the stretching itself is just what makes you happy, but it's like, if that's something that you do every morning at the same time and you make a routine out of it, it helps your brain understand that, like, it just like helps you get like into the right space to do everything else, if that makes sense.
No, I agree.
So like, yeah, take care of your mental health, and then do something every day that's for yourself.
I love that. Sohmi, thank you so much. I've loved this podcast. How can people?
Thank you for having me.
No worries. How can people follow you? How can people listen to your music?
I guess through all the regular channels. I guess I'm mostly on Instagram, but you know,
What's your
I've also
handle?
got my handle is Sohmi at Sohmi _ so at SOHMI _ and I think it's the same on Twitter.
Do people use Twitter still?
You know, they do. Well, they do because, like, you know, like people are. I
Clearly.
mean, the feed is just constantly
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean. But I'm not super big on it, but every once in a while I'll put my like kind of stream of consciousness
Yeah.
like thoughts on there, like things that don't feel like things that where I'm like, I don't know if my Instagram is the appropriate like home for this random thought, you know?
Yeah, I
So
like Twitter for that. Twitter's interesting for that because you can. But during the pandemic, I unfollowed practically everybody. I have like super, and I probably should unfollow less. But I don't go on it. I go on it once a week and just kind of post and ghost, as I call it.
Yeah, no, I can see that. It's not the like healthiest of spaces all the time. But every once in a while, like, you know, I find some gems on there or some updates that I would have otherwise missed, or kind of like, you know, you can kind of get a read into like some of your friends' like mental states by like reading their stream of consciousness tweets. And like from there I can be like, maybe I should check in on my friend. Is he okay? Yeah. So like it's valuable in its own ways, but I'd say, Instagram is probably more of like the space where
You're at.
Yeah, I'm at. So there, and my music's on Spotify and SoundCloud and all those good places, Apple Music. So
awesome. Go listen, people. Thank you so much. I'm sure I'll see you at some point over the year. You're playing with me.
September.
Is it September?
It is. Like, are we allowed to like?
Yeah, fuck it. It's in Austin. What date is it?
I think. Are you sure we're allowed to?
I don't care. Fuck it.
It's like September 2nd or so.
I'm pulling up my calendar. Is it the 2nd?
Yeah, I think so.
It's not in my calendar yet, but yeah, it's happening in Austin.
In Austin.
Whoop, whoop. It's gonna be
I'm
good.
excited. I love Austin, and I haven't been back since last November. So
same. It's a fun place. Thank you so much. Keep safe, and I'll see you very soon.
Thanks, Will.
Thanks, mate. Bye. I love that. That was amazing. Hope you did. Big thanks to Sohmi for coming on. Big thanks to you all for listening. Please subscribe. Please share it. Please give us reviews. Keep safe. Till next time.